I'd like to share with you the evolution of the Trunki over the years and how once you've launched a product, it's never game over. You've got to keep on thinking about how you can improve your product based on market feedback, consumer feedback and retail feedback. So let's start off with before Trunki was born, it looked like this. This was a very early prototype I made way back in 1997. This was a sample that I created using solid foam, and the reason for creating this prototype was to test out the size of the product with children so they could sit on it and I could start understanding how well they'd be able to fit on it, use it, how their legs would work, could they touch the floor and things. One of the early features I designed was this retractable handle. So the idea here was that this would be a cord, there'd be a nose on the front that would have a spring in and allow the cord to be pulled back. I decided to drop this feature in the end because I felt it was a bit of a strangulation risk, so the cord could get wrapped around a child's neck, and with the spring that could cause a problem, and also the spring feature was going to be very expensive. So that idea was dropped, but the general form, as you can see with the saddle, the wheels, was kind of the birth of the original Trunki idea. So let me introduce you to the Mark I Trunki. This is the original Trunki. Trixie here, she was one of the first 1,600 Trunkis that arrived in Avonmouth back in the 5th of May 2006, Trunki's birthday. So she's one of the originals. She arrived with her brother Terence, the blue Trunki, and I'd just like to talk through some of the original features that this product had. So you can probably see there's a key feature missing compared with the other Trunkis here, and that's the carry handle on the top. So when I was developing Trunki, some key research I learnt about was that children can damage their backs carrying heavy bags. So I didn't want the children to carry the bag, I wanted them to ride on it or pull it along with the tow handle. So I didn't put the carry handle on. However, feedback later, as I'll explain, meant we put it back on. So that's one of the key features here. Another feature is that the catches actually open on opposite sides, which is a little bit fiddly. However, there's a very good reason for that, and that's the moulds that make these Trunkis are incredibly expensive. So when we first started, I only invested in one mould that can make the case half rather than two. And then through tweaking a few of the bits of the tool, we could actually make both sides with the one tool, which was a lot more cost effective for starting up the business. But it did mean the catches opened on, as I said, the opposite sides, which meant it's a bit awkward to open. Actually, if we open the Trunki, you can see inside. Another area that we really struggled with in the early days was this rubber rim. Now, it's absolutely critical for me that we had this rubber rim because I felt it was really important to protect children's fingers while they shut the case, and that they couldn't damage or trap their fingers. So it was important to have this as a nice soft rubber. However, the factory originally really struggled to glue the rubber onto the polypropylene. Polypropylene as a plastic is notorious for being able to stick things to it. So the factory ended up screwing the rubber in. As you can see here, lots of screws. And they ended up making the rubber incredibly stiff. So it actually wasn't a soft rubber anymore, it was very stiff, so that they could screw the rubber in and glue it in, which wasn't ideal. Another feature, as you may remember if you've ever seen the Dragon's Den episode, was the toe strap. So this is the original toe strap with the hook, the infamous hook that Theo pulled off in the den. So actually the hook didn't break, it just popped off because it was made of a soft polypropylene. It's very easy to fix. I called the factory and said, let's make this in a stronger material, a nylon that wouldn't pop off and was a lot stronger, so problem solved very quickly. So let me introduce you to Bernard, the Mark III Trunki. So he was the first animal off our Mark III tooling, and that was back in 2009. So the consumers were feeding back it was a great product. We didn't really need to make hardly any changes to the product itself, but we're getting frustrated at retail in the shops. Retailers were putting Trunkis on either the top shelf so people couldn't see them, or on the bottom shelf, and we really wanted retailers to be able to display the product better. So we also had another problem. We were trying to sell our products in the US and we were failing the safety standard. Only on one particular point, and that point was that when they took a Mark II Trunki, they'd put it on an inclined surface, they'd measure an inch back from the edge of the saddle, which is this edge here, applied pressure, and because the saddle was so long and it went kind of then over the wheelbase of the Trunki, the product would actually tip over and therefore fail the test. Passed everything else but only this one test, which was deeply frustrating because we couldn't sell Trunki in America. So the idea here was to actually shorten the saddle. So we made the saddle shorter and put these scoops in that would allow the Trunki to be stacked in stores. So let me quickly demonstrate. So put two Trunkis together and you can make a Trunki pyramid. The wheels actually nest in these shallow scoops here. So we killed two birds with one stone. This new tooling that made the saddle a bit shorter allowed it to pass the US safety standard, and we can launch our product in America and allow the product to look pretty good in store. There was one small feature we were getting a bit of complaint from, and that was in the market. Our toe loop, as you can see here, sticks out quite a long way. If a Trunki should be dropped or whatever, that toe loop was quite exposed, and occasionally we'll get consumers saying that their toe loop had broken because it had snapped off. So in this latest design, we integrated the toe loop more so it wasn't as exposed, and therefore if it was dropped, it wouldn't break. And then the final change on the Mark III Trunki was the addition of two carry handles. So although parents had said we want the carry handle back on here, when it was on one side and it was heavy, it would kind of be a bit lopsided, and people didn't think it was a particularly secure way of carrying their Trunki. They felt it might pop open or something. So with this design, we introduced two handles back on the Trunki here, and that was the solution. Now let me introduce you to the Mark IV Trunki. This is Trunki's American cousin and was made under license by Melissa & Doug, a very large toy company. So our Mark III Trunki now passed the US toy standards. We started selling quite well in America, but we needed a big partner really to take on America for us. So we worked with Melissa & Doug. We gave them the license to sell our design, our brand in America, and they would do all the hard work, the manufacture, the sales, and they would pay us a royalty. One of the areas that Melissa & Doug didn't like about my Trunki design was the catches. They felt the catches were a bit awkward to open for children, with them having to open the catch like a normal catch. So they developed these sliding catches, which you kind of see on cheap toolboxes and things. So when the catches are down, you can't open the product, and when you slide the catches up, the product does open. Now I thought this was a bit of a weak design, but they insisted on developing this catch. So the product launched, and very shortly after we were getting really negative reviews on Amazon because people were quite easily ripping off these catches. They kept popping off or breaking. So that was a bit of a disappointment. Inside the Trunki, another feature they changed was that the teddy bear seat belts, they wanted the elastic to break off, because they felt this, again, could be a strangulation hazard. So they created these plastic clips which would break off at a given force so that the children couldn't strangle themselves. I didn't think this was a problem, and actually by creating this break-off force meant that you couldn't really put much weight behind these because they just pop off and become useless. Again, a bit of a disappointment, and not something that went down particularly well in the market. Now let me introduce you to my proudest Trunki to date. This is the Mark V Trunki, and the Trunki that's made in the UK. So we launched this product in 2012 after 2 years of re-engineering the whole Trunki to make it much easier for assembly back in the UK. So the Chinese Trunkis, the Mark IIIs, were made using about 25 metal parts. Let me show you. Bring back on our Trunki here. You can see this. There's 3 screws holding the catch in. There's another 3 on the opposite side. There's screws in the corners holding the rubber in. And we have 3 screws hidden behind this cap holding the horns in. And the Trunki actually has a metal pin going through the hinge so it can open. Now this Trunki has no metal at all, not a single screw. So it's entirely made of clever plastic engineering. We actually have a patent granted on our clever plastic catch here, where by simply pressing this plastic, the catch opens and closes. And actually this became a much easier design for children to use. So what we use here is a very special engineering plastic called acetal, which has a very good memory, so you can make good plastic springs out of it. And you can see there's a sprung part here that allows, when you press the button, it can hinge over. When it's closed, the case can't pull apart. So that was a great feature. We also introduced a new way of attaching our carry handles onto the Trunki. We sew on these fabric handles onto these plastic brackets, and then they snap fit into a recess here, which means again we can remove metal. On the Mark III Trunki, you can see there's a metal crimp here that holds the fabric on. So again, we were able to eliminate that part too. On the inside, we have our rubber, which is actually what's called co-moulded onto a plastic spine. We see here that this is a bit like your toothbrush at home. So you have a plastic handle on your toothbrush, and then you have a rubber, what's called an overmould, which gives it a bit of grip. Well, we took that idea and said, let's make a hard plastic spine that could then fix really tightly onto the suitcase, and then overmould this soft rubber that would protect the children's fingers. And then that actually, through another incredibly clever way, we have these almost like barbs that are created on the case that then allow, when you push this feature on, there's a recess there, and you line it up, push it in, click, and that's now permanently fixed. So we can also use this clever plastic design to attach in our teddy bear seatbelts. So you can see there's some barbs there, some sort of grip features. So simply when they're assembling the product, they line up the elastic, and then that snaps in and then permanently holds the elastic in there, again removing the need for another screw. And then finally, the way we attach the horn onto the Trunki, you remember me pointing out there are 3 metal screws that normally screw that horn on with the Mark III. Well, on the Mark V, there's no screws. And again, we use very clever plastic snap fits to clip on the horn onto the Trunki. So you can see the recesses here, and there's 3 pins here. So the horn clips in onto the Trunki like so. Now that on its own, we didn't believe was going to be strong enough to withstand the knocks of the Trunki being dropped on the horn, and it could pop off. So what we wanted to create was a bracket on the back that could then be placed behind those features, which are called snap fit. So a snap fit basically bends. When you push it through the plastic, it bends and then snaps with a ledge over the plastic, so it's permanently in. But that snap could still move, and when you drop a Trunki plate on the horn, then that snap could pop back out. So we wanted to stop that snap from moving, so we created a bracket here, which when you put on the back here, then stops, if you can see, this plastic snap from moving, because it's blocked by this part here. So that simply fits in there and stops the horn from moving. So that's our Mark V Trunki. Actually, this is #1 off the production line, all signed by the team who developed this product and brought it to market. In fact, we're so proud of this because it actually won a Plastics Innovation Award by the way we had re-engineered this product.